Hello and welcome back. This time I'm going to review the Honda CB350, a beautiful wee bike in Honda's latest edition. I had planned on leaving this a wee bit. I think it's always wise to let a bike out for a little while to fully digest the design and appreciate it, but this is quite an important one. I put aside my other review to do this. It was also a request, and I think a lot of people should enjoy what I've seen in it, and they may have seen the same points as well. First of all, Honda themselves are quite a sensible company. They're what I would call the sensible dad of motorcycles. They wear New Balance and slacks, and they always make sure you get home safe. Every now and again they just lose the plot and make a Fireblade or a Rune, but generally people know that you can trust a Honda. It's always going to be reliable, it's always going to get you there. The only negative with Honda is they can be a bit boring at times, but people are always prepared to trade off the excitement for that degree is sensible, where you know it's always going to run and you're not going to be paying through the nose for parts. One of the most interesting thing about motorcycle manufacturers at the moment that car manufacturers seem to have completely missed is they really know how to read the room. They've seen that the world is in an economic downturn, so they've started focusing on small, affordable, fun, easy to run, easy to maintain bikes. This is an outstanding example of that from Honda. When I look on car manufacturer YouTubes and things like that, they're still not understanding that what people really need is this bit in a car. A lot of people on car sites are calling for simple, less technological, cheaper, reliable vehicles instead of these ridiculous, extremely expensive SUVs and electric cars. It's very interesting how motorcycle manufacturers can pivot so much more quickly. Maybe it's because designing a bike takes less effort than a car, but still they really have to be commended on reading the room, so to speak, and understanding what people are asking for at the moment. On first impressions, just looking at it, it's got very clean, simple lines. It pays a lot of tribute to when bikes were simpler. You can see a lot of classic bike design in here. This is especially important in a retro bike. As soon as you start adding modern features and modern parts, it can start fighting with the design. Fancy shapes, fancy technology, it can all just take away a little from the overall classic design of something. And in this design, they understand what people are looking for, that people really love that kind of vintage, simplistic design. And this little bike has it in spades. It very much is a nod to bikes of the late 70s, early 80s, with hints of bikes from the 60s. Obviously, Honda being sensible, it's not going to be as full-on vintage as a Royal Enfield, who really sort of have this mastered, but Honda still always have their sort of sensible trousers on, so there's always a degree of practicality and sensible in there that you won't get from other people, which a lot of people really want in a bike. Initially, when you look at it, it does look like a baby Triumph. It looks exactly like a Triumph with the engine layout, the fins on the engine, things like that. And this harks back to when the Japanese manufacturers started emulating British manufacturers in terms of style, not in engineering. This is very apparent in the suspension. You can see the rubber covers on the front suspension, and it's the old way round. The rear suspension is the same, incredibly simple. And Honda have to be commended on focusing on a design that's simple and classic more than anything else. Honda also have to be commended on making this very unique. Normally it's quite tempting for a manufacturer to just use as many off-the-shelf parts as possible, and this always kind of kills the design, but it's more expensive for them to make something that's unique and original, and Honda here have done that but kept the price really low, which is a really good thing from Honda. They've done really well here. First of all, they've captured the vintage engine design perfectly. They've kept the fins on the engine, which I love to see, and they've also left a lovely amount of clean space around the engine so you can see right through the bike. This is classic motorcycling at its best. They've also done a great job of hiding anything like cables, wires, technological stuff deep within the bike so you don't have that clutter that you get on a lot of modern bikes. I also want to bring your attention to their use of logos and branding. they've kept beautiful old vintage retro branding on the bike and kept it simplistic. This adds a lot to the bike. There's no point in making something that looks vintage and then sticking a brand new typeface on it. It has a very classic 70s Honda feel to it, which is just lovely. You can tell they had fun designing this bike. The seat is very nice. I love their design in terms of simplicity of everything. They've pared everything back and kept it as simple and beautiful as possible. The seat design is particularly lovely. There's some lovely little touches in there, and it's not going over the top, it's just harks back to vintage Hondas. It's really, really nice. I don't see many plastics on it, which is always a giveaway if someone's essentially trying to cut costs and make it as cheaply as possible. There is obviously plastics on it, but it's well hidden, and the focus is on the metal components, which again is a classic retro thing. Obviously they didn't have the technology to make lots of weird shaped plastic parts on old bikes, so here they've kept it to an absolute minimum and they've done a great job of it. One thing I really want to bring your attention to that's outstanding is how simple the frame is. It's only got one strut down at the front. All too often manufacturers get carried away with performance and handling and put the focus on that instead of the actual aesthetic beauty of the frame. And in this bike, it's got a frame that harks back to very old British bikes with the one part just down the front. And this helps clean up the whole engine bay as well. It looks absolutely gorgeous. So Honda have to be commended. They could have went for something where they'd have made more profit. They could have used more off-the-shelf parts, and instead they've understood why people like this style of bike. They've understood the retro themes, and they've made something unique at an outstanding price point that just looks, it's a stunning wee bike. It really is. It's the very definition of a baby Triumph. If Triumph had made this, it wouldn't have surprised me. It's really a brilliant little piece of design. Often you see other manufacturers try and get on the retro bandwagon, but they use too many modern parts, they use too many modern design elements, and they kind of kill it. But yeah, this is a gorgeous wee bike. Is it as pretty as a classic 350? Probably not. It's not quite got the absolute dedication to vintage design, but there's enough in there. And you know Honda are quite sensible, so they're not going to go full flamboyance like Royal Enfield will. They'll keep a degree of practicality within it as well. Then on top of this, for such a price, you're getting Honda reliability, you're getting a beautiful piece of design, you're getting a price point that's just absolutely outstanding. I think Honda really smashed this one. It really is outstanding. It's a lovely wee bike. So it seems a little unfair to critique it considering how well they've done. I have a few critiques of it. I think Honda understand that the aftermarket will take to this bike. This is the company that made the Monkey, and the Monkey is just a brilliant piece of vintage design. And Honda have carefully worked the price point, carefully worked the design, because they know the aftermarket will really go to town on this. I've seen a few appear already with custom jobs on it, and oh, they are just stunning. They really lift the bike and they just look amazing. As a cheap platform base bike to do something very cool on, it's absolutely perfect. That's something a lot of people I don't think will appreciate with the design, but Honda have made this with the view that, yeah, people are going to customize the hell out of this. They're really going to go to town on it and make some absolutely beautiful wee bikes. There's just something so charming and approachable about it. It's not aggressive, it's not threatening, it's soft. The curves are lovely and soft, the lines are incredibly simple. So in some respects it's probably going to attract people to motorcycles that are maybe a bit intimidated by other designs, which again is an outstanding feature of putting the design of your bike. So is there anything on it I would change? Well, I don't like to critique it because I know how well they've done, but there's a few wee points in it that I think I would probably change if I owned it myself. I can't blame Honda for this. In every way they've excelled. These are just things I would make it to lift it from what I would consider a very solid 8 out of 10. You could put it to a 9.5 out of 10 with just a little bit of work yourself and a few pieces you could add yourself to really lift it and make it unique. And you know they've done this with the design in mind. You can buy a very cheap solid bike and then you can really make it your own for not much money. So for me, the first thing where I don't think they've quite got it is the colours available. You can have grey, black or grey. Now, given the exuberance you can get on a Royal Enfield, given the exuberance as well on a Honda Monkey, I really think it should have more colour options. Yellows, obviously Honda Red should be in there, and maybe some 70s colours as well would just absolutely nail it. Yeah, it wouldn't take that much to respray it. They've obviously done this to save on costs, but I think for such a fun, approachable, cute bike, it needs those outrageous colour schemes. You can get away with a lot more colour schemes on this than you could with a bigger, posher bike. I also think the tank is just a smidgen too big. I think, to be honest, this is sensible Honda dad coming in and saying you need enough fuel to make sure you get home. And I found this on some Hondas, the tank is just a little bit too big. And I think if the tank was just scaled down a tiny fraction, it would just help the overall proportions and scale of the bike. It was the first thing that struck me, and I sort of felt like this is classic Honda sensible versus aesthetics. You can tell there's a battle going on there. The Honda designers probably wanted it smaller, and the sensible Honda dad was saying, no, they've got to have enough petrol to make sure they get home. Please make it a little bit bigger. It is a beautiful tank. It's just, if you look at the overall portions of the bike, it's just that little bit too big. I'm sure in the aftermarket someone will fix this. The second part that always seems to affect the design, and this is something I don't think it works on this, is the exhaust. I think the overall shape of the exhaust is good. I think the whole exhaust should have been chrome. The heat shield on the exhaust, again, is sensible Honda dad. They're like, oh, it's an exhaust, it's hot, you need to protect your feet, get a heat shield on it. And they've put a heat shield on that's the design language for all Hondas. It's got those 3 little notches on it. My problem with it is the design has many complex shapes in it and angles, and those angles fight with the soft curves of the rest of the bike. I have seen ones where they've taken the heat shield off and replaced exhaust, like a cheeky Yoshimura on the back and things like that, and immediately it just lifts the bike enormously. It looks so much better when people do that. Honda, I expect new people were going to do this, but yeah, that heat shield, it's too angular and it's not retro enough. It represents the sort of modern engineering with its complex shapes and forms, and that just throws the retro feel out a little bit. The rear mudguard works very well. It's incredibly clean. Is the front mudguard too short for a retro bike? Older bikes tended to have much longer mudguards. I don't know if a longer mudguard in the style of a 350 would work. I'd have to try it out and see it. But I do think the one on the front is a little bit too short for a small retro bike. I know it's a bit old man and old fashioned to have a big mudguard, but I think on this bike they could have probably gotten away with it. Again, Aftermarket will probably deal with this, but yeah, the little front mudguard, it looks cute, but it's of absolutely no use. And is it fully retro? Because we know these tiny mudguards are quite a modern thing. Just on the subject of mudguards, I do wonder if they've got a scrambler version in the works. And I say this because immediately when I seen it, I picked up a sort of scrambler vibe. Much like how Triumph done the 400X, I feel this would just absolutely rock as a little scrambler. They probably have it in the works at the moment. I just think the shapes and the forms and everything in it would just absolutely nail a retro style scrambler. So the rear light cluster folded under the seat is a really lovely piece of design on such a budget bike. It reminds me a lot of these sort of custom builds people do, where they do everything they can to hide what can be a monstrous light cluster stuck on the back of the bike. My only thing is, I sort of feel like if it was just round and more simplistic and more retro, it might feed more into the retro design of the bike. The rectangular shape of the rear brake light. Also as well, the indicators are tiny LED ones with sharp angles on them. Again, the Aftermarket will deal with this, but I really think the little round bullet type indicators would make a huge difference with the solid round rear light cluster would just look absolutely great on this. One small round rear light at the back of the seat, and then little round bullet indicators would just absolutely lift it. In terms of the headlight, it's a cracking bit of design, but it's got a couple of little bits modern shapes and engineering in it, so I don't know if a more simple front light with less detail on it might have worked better. Again, if you get one, you can always swap all these things out and make it feel more retro, but I really think there's a bit too many of those sort of plastic modern shapes in it. Those CAD kind of designs are coming through in the lights both front and back. And while they've done an outstanding job, you could leave them and it looks clean and they don't interrupt the bike and they fit perfectly with it. The lights are usually a place where you can get that retro feel into a bike. Another part that doesn't quite sit with me, because I think the design of it's a little bit too modern, is the metal part that holds the rear foot pegs. So it's very much speaking the Honda design language, but the angled shapes and sharp angles of it do tend to clash with the soft curves. There's soft curves in most of the bike, and then it just has these sharp angles, and it feels very much like I'd want to take that off and do something simpler and more retro with the rear pegs. It's not immediately noticeable, but if you compare it with the parts around it, the crankcase, the engine, the airbox bit just above it, and the fuel tank, you can see it stands out a little bit. The wheels are completely fine for what they are. You know that a sensible Honda dad would say, no, we're not putting spokes on this, it would be too much cleaning, too much maintenance. Spoked wheels, if you were doing a custom job, would look absolutely banging on it. A nice set of chrome spoked wheels would just absolutely rock. I know they're a pain in the arse to clean and most people don't want to do that. And the wheels are exactly perfect in terms of balance and form. And they've kept the tyres nice and chunky, which adds to the cute retro feel of the bike. It keeps it cute and approachable. So yeah, maybe change the wheels if I was going for something more exotic. But otherwise, the wheels are perfect really. Talking of the crankcase, look at how simple it is. The shapes, the forms, the proportion on it are just absolutely brilliant, and to have that shiny plate with the vintage Honda logo on it is really lovely. That's a classic piece of retro design, and they've done really well there. They've kept any faff out of it. It's just a couple of circles. The shapes are so simple. You know from the design brief, simplicity was the absolute key, and they've really nailed it around the engine area. It's really outstanding. I think the little plate is one of my favourite features on the bike. So overall for me, I would say that pretty much they've nailed it. They've done a brilliant job. They haven't codged together a parts bin special. They've made something unique and original. My personal taste would be for more retro parts, which I would add to it myself. But then these are the sort of things that you could do yourself, or maybe you like it as it is. Anyway you cut it, if you owned this bike, you would find it an absolute delight to look at. It is a joy to look at. What it does have in spades is character, personality, cuteness, approachability. It's not a angry, threatening motorcycle. It's a, hey, let's go for a picnic kind of motorcycle. There's a little bit of fight in it between some of the modern parts and some of the retro parts. Again, this is personal taste. I lean more towards retro stuff, but you could leave it as is and it would still look lovely. Overall, I think Honda have done an outstanding job. I think really the first thing I want to see Honda do though is some outrageous colours and graphics. Take a leaf out of Royal Enfield's book, do a cool tank, do a cool exhaust, and just bring in that sort of fun element, because this bike is all about fun, and I think just having it in grey, black or grey is the main thing. Some outrageous yellows, an orange one with chrome bits on it, things like that, then it would really lift it. But fantastic job, well done Honda. For such a price, for such a cool bike, it's a great time to be into biking, and I am envious of anyone who buys one. I think they'll have an absolute ball on it. Thanks so much for my review. There's more coming up. I really enjoy doing these, and I'm loving all the people's comments. I think a lot of people aren't versed in design, aesthetics, art, things like that. So I'm finding that a lot of people are realizing when they have someone explain it what goes on in the design of a bike. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my videos, please subscribe. It helps me a lot. And bye bye.